that by supporting masking and social distancing, we can keep our curve flat, our community healthy, and businesses open. Please support safe shopping by masking up in Arcata. If you wish to make a public comment during the meeting, either at the 2 open public comment periods or for an individual agenda item, there are 2 ways to do so. If you are logged onto the Zoom meeting webinar, click on raise your hand on the right-hand side of your screen. When it is time for public comment on the item on which you wish to speak, the clerk will unmute you. You will have 2 minutes to comment. Method 2. If you can access the meeting by phone, call the number at the bottom of the screen. Enter a meeting ID also at the bottom of the screen. Press *9 on your phone. This will raise your hand. When it is time for public comment on the item on which you wish to speak, the clerk will unmute your phone. You will hear a prompt that will indicate your phone is unmuted. You will have 2 minutes to comment. First, we will start with the flag salute. And please join me if you so choose. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the city clerk make a roll call, please?
Mayor Winkler?
Here.
Vice Mayor Patino?
Here.
Councilmember Pereira?
Here.
Councilmember Watson?
Here.
Present.
Next is ceremonial matters. The first proclamation on Coastal Cleanup Day will be read by Councilmember Pereira.
A proclamation in recognition of Coastal Cleanup Day, September 2020. Whereas the state of California has a varied coastline of sandy beaches, rocky shores, productive estuaries, marshes, tidal flats, urban areas, and harbors, and whereas the marine environment is one of the most valuable resources for recreation, tourism, fishing, and other coastal activities. Coastal protection is a responsibility shared by residents, the business community, and public institutions. And whereas the North Coast Environmental Center is the Humboldt County organizer for 2020 Coastal Cleanup Days, taking place each Saturday in September, during which an anticipated 1,000 people will clean beaches, rivers, and estuaries along the entire Humboldt coastline. And whereas the North Coast Environmental Center's Beach Beautification Program, Now Adopt a Beach, began in Humboldt County over 40 years ago and is now celebrated throughout California and around the world. Last year, 700 Humboldt County volunteers picked up almost 7 tons of trash from our shoreline and coast. And whereas residents can be proud that year after year, Humboldt County continues to be among the state's leaders in the number of volunteers who help keep our ocean, rivers, and coastline clean. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata recognizes every Saturday in September 2020 as Coastal Cleanup Day and encourages individuals, businesses, service groups, and public institutions to safely hit the beach to jointly promote a healthy and productive coastal environment, signed today by Mayor Michael Winkler.
Right, thank you. And next will be 2 proclamations that will be read by Vice Mayor Patino. The first is a proclamation, the next one will be read by Councilmember Watson. Proclamation recognizing Suicide Prevention Week will be read by, as I said, Councilmember Watson.
Recognizing September 6th through 12th, 2020 as Suicide Prevention Week. Whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the 2nd leading cause of death among people younger than 44 years old. And whereas in the US, someone attempts to take their life every 23 seconds, a total of over 1.4 million suicide attempts each year. Someone completes suicide every 10.9 minutes, resulting in over 48,000 suicide deaths each year. And whereas suicide is the only leading cause of death in the US that has increased every year for the past decade. In California in 2018, 4,491 people died by suicide. In that same year, Humboldt County experienced 33 suicide deaths. And whereas over 90% of people who die by suicide have a diagnosable and treatable mental health condition that is often not recognized or treated. The stigma associated with mental health conditions and suicidality works against suicide prevention by discouraging at-risk persons from seeking life-saving help and further traumatizes survivors of suicide loss. And whereas organizations such as the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP, envision a world without suicide and are dedicated to saving lives and bringing hope to those affected by suicide through research, education, advocacy, and resources for those who have lost a loved one or who are struggling. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the City Council of the City of Arcata that September 6th through 12th, 2020 is Suicide Prevention Week in Arcata, and all residents are encouraged to learn more and get involved by visiting afsp.org. Signed today, September 2nd, 2020 by Mayor Michael Winkler.
All right, thank you. Now, the next two will be read by Vice Mayor Patino. Proclamation recognizing September 2020 as Community Pride and Peace Month, and proclamation in recognition of Queer Community Recognition Month, September 2020.
Okay, this first proclamation recognizing September 2020 as Community Pride and Peace Month. Whereas Community Pride and Peace, CPP, was formed with local support almost 4 years ago. And it was formed to create five solution teams to address agreed upon problems. And whereas CPP has a mission, inspire pride and peace in our community by putting solutions into action. Through unity and respect, our mission is to bring our communities locally and globally together to create and be the positive change we want to see in the world. And whereas CPP has helped make our community safer and cleaner and has hosted events at Valley West, McKinleyville, and surrounding neighborhoods to invigorate and recharge this important neighborhood in collaboration with the Arcata Parks and Recreation, the Arcata Police Department, local businesses, and other nonprofit organizations. And whereas CPP members provide volunteers with creating over 400 meals per day for meal distribution for the unsheltered with the Arcata House Partnership. And whereas CPP now has almost 2,000 members on its Facebook page, and it's part of the Ink People's Dream Maker program. CPP has partnered with other local nonprofits and businesses to create events, clean up neighborhoods, share local resources, connect various organizations to solve problems together, and to feature local leaders. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata, in recognition of the Community Pride and Peace, does hereby recognize the month of September as Community Pride and Peace Month in the City of Arcata, and urges the Arcata community to support these efforts. Signed today, September 2nd, 2020, by our Mayor, Michael Winkler. Next, Next, for recognition from the City of Arcata, a proclamation in recognition of Queer Community Recognition Month, September 2020. Whereas there are many communities being marginalized, isolated, or underrepresented, despite one of the nation's greatest strengths being our rich diversity of people, cultures, and histories. It is extremely important for people to support each other, especially in this pandemic situation, and the queer community can serve as an example of this. Regardless of orientation, gender, or other preferences, we share similar experiences, including that many of us are from other marginalized groups as well. And whereas recent sociological and pandemic events, as well as historic events in our own community, emphasize how we're all affected by violations against those belonging to nearly all marginalized groups. Such events also bring to light the urgent need for awareness, recognition, and education of the forms of prejudice, racism, and discrimination, recognition, and discrimination, we all fundamentally share. This can be done in a manner that fosters awareness and creates a safe, welcoming, and inclusive community for people from all walks of life. And whereas the City of Arcata honors the value of the queer community, as well as their contributions with growing recognition and appreciation that their challenges and struggles for full equality are akin to and part of those shared with other marginalized groups. And whereas Redwood Pride would love to be able to invite everyone from Humboldt County, as well as the surrounding areas, to celebrate our diversity with the Redwood Pride Community Festival, Parade, and upcoming evening events. However, in the light of the current pandemic situation and the surrounding regulations, the next Pride events remain unscheduled at this time and will be announced when it is safe to resume gatherings in the community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata recognizes September 2020 as Queer Community Recognition Month in the City of Arcata. This proclamation dated September 2nd, 2020, and signed by Mayor Michael Winkler.
Thank you. Next is report by commissions and committees. The Public Safety Committee is still working on an update of the report, so that will be presented at a future meeting. Next is early oral communications. This 15-minute time period is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council at this time will be limited to 2 minutes, and we can take up to 7 speakers. Please raise your hand or press *9 if you are calling in by phone and wish to make a comment.
There is no public comment for this item.
All right. So next is a meeting of the successor agency to the Arcata Community Development Agency. At this time, the members of the City Council act as the governing body of the successor agency to the Arcata Community Development Agency. First, we have the consent calendar. Item 1, direct the secretary and clerk of the board to file the 2014 notice of biennial review conflict of interest code with the City of Arcata, stating that no amendment is required. Is there any council member who would like to remove an item? Is there any member of the public or staff that requests an item be removed from the consent calendar?
There is not.
All right, may I have a motion on the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I will do this by roll call. Councilmember Watson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patino.
Aye.
Councilmember Pereira.
Aye.
And I vote aye. We will now adjourn the successor agency meeting and move to the City Council meeting consent calendar. A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of July 15th, 2020. B, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of July 20th, 2020. C, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of July 27th, 2020. D, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of August 10th, 2020. E, bi-weekly report on general warrants. F, approve employment agreement with Finance Director Andrea Starshevsky, extending the term to September 16th, 2025. G, approve employment agreement with Chief of Police Brian J. Ahern, extending the term to November 6, 2025. Award contract in the amount of $202,600 to GHD Incorporated to provide engineering services for Phase 1 of the Plunkett Road Waterline Retrofit Project, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. I, adopt resolution number 201-10, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata, rescinding resolution number 178-10 and authorizing and approving the Arcata and Mad River Transit Systems Title VI plan pursuant to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. J, approve the procurement process and award a purchase contract for vinyl sheet pile baffle wall materials for Oxidation Pond 2 to Everlast Synthetic Products LLC. Authorize staff to purchase the materials not to exceed $113,336.46, inclusive of tax and freight, plus 5% contingency of contract price contingency not to exceed $5,666.82, and to work with Everlast Synthetic Products LLC to finalize the contract documents and authorize the city manager to execute all necessary documents. K, number 1, approve the acquisition of a grant-funded Tesla Incorporated battery backup system valued at $866,796 for no cost for the wastewater treatment plant through the California Public Utilities Commission's Self-Generation Incentive Program. And 2, authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. Is there any council member who would like to pull an item? Is there any member of the public or staff that requests an item be pulled from the consent calendar?
There's an item.
Okay, may I have a motion on the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I will do this by roll call. Councilmember Watson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pereira,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patino,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Right, next is old business. Declare a continuation of the local emergency related to the coronavirus pandemic. May I have a staff report, please, from City Manager Deemer?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Winkler. This is your every 2-week update of our coronavirus pandemic declaration of local emergency. The reason that we put it on old business tonight instead of consent is that we wanted to get feedback and direction from the council and the public on the potential of opening up some of our neighborhood linear and city park spaces for small businesses that are, we've had requests from businesses such as Pilates or yoga instructors, dance classes, small exercise groups that would like to find alternative locations while they're not feeling comfortable working out of their studio spaces during the COVID-19 response. So similar to what we've done for businesses and retail vending, staff is recommending that we try to open up some park spaces as appropriate, working with the individual instructors and the, in the general location of their regular studio potentially to be able to utilize during this period so that we can support their business reopening. The process would be in effect through December 31st, and staff would put together sort of a streamlined rental process similar to what we've done for the sidewalk cafe and vending. Right now, the rental fees for, typically we don't rent our public facilities for profit companies. So the rates that the council sets are really just to support nonprofit or not-for-profit purposes, a child's birthday party or a company picnic, but not the actual business of the company. So right now our rental fees for use of community parks run about $30.75 an hour and $24 an hour for nonprofit users. The staff recommendation is that we could utilize that rate structure for this process, but wanted to get the council's feedback on that.
I will now ask for questions from the council, starting with Vice Mayor Patino.
I don't have any questions. I trust that staff will vet whoever is going to rent this, and I think the rates are fine the way they are. Thank you.
Councilmember Pereira.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I think the more we can have businesses, operating in a time like this is really important. I would like for us to look at the rate structure, just because looking at currently for retail and restaurants, if they're using the public right of way, currently we don't have a rate structure for that. So I think just for consistency, I think it's worth us talking about what that rate structure looks like and under these circumstances. Whether that's reducing the rates on this particular situation or waiving the fees. I mean, I just think we should talk about it.
Councilmember Watson.
Yeah, I mean, I would just need more information, I guess, on the existing. I don't know. I guess to me, I'd at least want to make sure we're covering our costs, whatever we're doing with it.
Right. I think this is a good idea, and I think this can allow businesses to operate in a safer environment than doing it indoors. A question that I have for staff is, what are the requirements as far as masking or social distancing that would apply in the operation of these businesses if they're going to be operating in the linear parks?
So each of the businesses would have to submit their compliance plan to the County of Humboldt for approval, and each plan then would detail their masking and participant protocol. There are several good protocol out there now for many of these activities that certainly do require masking and disinfection depending on the process. But that would be approved through the county business plan process, and they would need to bring that to us to be eligible for the program.
Do we have expertise in reviewing these, or is that really just under the purview of the county health department and not something that we have capability of adequately reviewing?
We've had staff in that review process in the very beginning, but I guess candidly, the county really has honed the process, and they have now downsized that group to a small group that are doing these every single day. And really for the last probably month and a half have been this sort of exclusive team. So while we do have some staff that were trained and have that expertise, and we certainly could review those, I would say the staff that the county EOC has working on them now really can work with the businesses and direct them to what is the best practice that is working locally. So I would want them to start there, and then we certainly could review their plan as well if that's the will of the council.
Would it be possible to do spot checks and confirm that they are complying with the plan that they submitted, such as making sure that all participants are masking and keeping social distance?
Yeah, we certainly have people out in the community. I don't know if Deputy Director Neander has anything that you'd like to add.
Hi, we definitely are working toward that. Certainly the rates that we've set are rates that would cover our costs, which is why we suggested those rates. With respect to checking up on them, it depends on when they're running their classes, but certainly we like to be in touch and make sure everything is going well, and working with the neighborhood as well to make sure that they're okay with the program. So I think we could certainly look into that, and if that's something the council would like us to do, we can incorporate that into any of these outside rental opportunities that we go forward with.
So I would like to add that to a requirement on this item if that doing so has support of the council.
Exactly what are you asking for, Michael?
Oh, what I would like to do would be to have city staff do spot checks, especially when the classes are having their first sessions, to confirm that they're complying with the plan that they submitted to the county. And what I'm most concerned about are masking and social distancing.
Right. And you say spot checks. Could it be just a spot check once they open and then leave them alone?
That's what I was thinking.
I think it needs to be the responsibility of the business or whoever's operating it. I'm not like, against checks, but that needs to be specifically worded, I think, in the agreement, is that they take full responsibility for all their clients, customers, however they're referring to them as, to make sure everybody's following the county guidelines.
We do have that in our rental agreements, and certainly all the programs that we offered this summer and that we're offering this fall. We also have specific requirements that everybody has to sign and say they agree to those. So we do have that, and that would certainly be part of this rental agreement.
I had a comment about Sophia's idea of reducing or eliminating the charges, and on the face of it, it felt like, yeah, maybe we should do that. But then I forget that the streets that we've opened up, allowed people to take charge of, don't cost us any money while we don't have to water them and cut the lawns and all that. So it feels like the comparison isn't quite the same. And I think that we should stay with the rates that are set so that we can actually pay for our employees that will have to clean the area time and again, cut the lawns, water, and, actually probably meet with some of these groups at least once. So there's where I am on the charges. I think we should leave them.
Yeah, and I could see on a case-by-case basis that there was somebody wanted to operate something that was going to generate significant amount of retail sales tax. To me, that might make sense to help them get going. But if I think a lot of these proposed ones or examples, I don't know that they would be contributing back to the city. So, but yeah, overall, I agree with Vice Mayor Patino's comments.
I also agree with Vice Mayor Patino's comments because of potential extra cost to the city and use of these areas.
I just want to say that is totally fine. I mean, obviously, the majority of the council's not, interested in entertaining that. And that's absolutely fine. I think it was just worth bringing up, just given that. Yep. If we are going to explain to the public why there's a rate structure for this particular use of public space versus another, I think it's just making sure that we've talked about that and the reasons why we may or may not go that route. So that's totally fine. So thank you for discussing it.
Thanks.
All right. Do we have any public comments on this item?
We do have one public comment. I will bring go ahead, speaker.
Hello, Kent Sawatsky. I'm really good at this Zoom thing. I've had quite a bit of practice. My understanding this is your first meeting. I do also agree with Paul's assessment there as far as appropriate costs. You probably won't be getting any public comment today with what is on your screen. You have something up there that says *67 669 900 9128, and that when you try dialing with that, you get nothing. So I think you need to reach out to people for me to be able to participate here. I had dialed 1-669 900 9128, which is the normal process to get to Zoom. So your people, unless you have something on the agenda and they're not pulling it off the TV, won't be able to get a hold of you. So you may wish to announce that each time and verify what I'm saying. But if you do want to have any input, I don't think you're going to get it with *67. I tried 3 times and couldn't get through, used my normal method and was successful. So thank you for an opportunity to speak from the public. And it's always kind of an experiment out there these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. That if this is not working for access to the public, I think it would help if a member of staff could announce this at each item what is necessary to successfully make a live public comment.
Sounds good. We're happy to incorporate that. I think we must have left the 1 out, is my guess. The star 67 or 69 usually just hides the actual phone number, is why we've put that in. But I think maybe we need the 1 in there as well.
All right. Are there further questions or comments from council?
There are no other public comments on this item.
Are there further public comments on the same?
No, there are not.
There are none. Okay. So if there are no further comments from the council, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to, is this where we are in the declaration of continuation of local emergency related to coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect, Paul.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to declare continuation of the local emergency related to the coronavirus pandemic and with the amendments made in our conversation.
I'll second.
Sorry,
All right.
could you give a little more detail on what those amendments are?
That we were going to rent city parks at the normal rates to businesses that want to use them in a controlled environment. I think that's the only one that comes to mind.
Well, I was suggesting also to have staff do spot checks. I don't know if that's something you want to include.
Well, yeah, and to include a spot check by staff upon startup.
Thank you.
Did we get a second yet? Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll call on this. Vice Mayor Patino,
Yes.
Councilmember Pereira,
Aye.
Councilmember Watson,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Next is new
Mayor?
business.
I just wanted to let you know that the number on the bottom of the screen for the public has been corrected.
Thank you for that. Next is new business. Appoint one member to the Public Safety Committee for term expiring December 30th, 2024.
I think we decided to hold off till we get more information on whether or not there'll be more openings.
Do we need a motion to continue this?
No, we'll just re-agendize it with the final amount once we determine the final amount of vacancy.
Do we have any public comments on this item before we close it?
There are no public comments on this item.
Next is a presentation by Recology Arcata regarding number one, overview of recycling processing and markets. Number two, Arcata's waste stream audit and trends. And number three, potential program enhancements. And number four, state laws affecting waste diversion. I would like to welcome Linda Weiss from Recology here tonight, and also Jill Duffy representing Humboldt Waste Management Authority, both here to support and answer questions. Ms. Weiss, please begin when you are ready.
Well, hello, again, Linda Wise, I'm General Manager of the Recology operations here in Humboldt County, one of them being Recology Humboldt County. And I was asked tonight to cover those topics, even though the presentation on the PowerPoint, when it comes up, is not saying that. Mark, could you share the screen, please? I'm going to need the assistance of your staff to help me through this because I haven't got that function on my computer here. I should be covering all the topics that were on the agenda. Again, it's a pleasure to come and talk about something that's other than rates, which is usually what I do talk about. And when we see each other, it's usually in May or June to talk about that. So this gives you a chance to know what is going on here locally. Mark, could you help me with the next slide? So first, I know you see that there's 40 slides here. I won't take forever to go through them, but they are used pretty much for my guide to make sure I cover everything. I'm going to talk about who Recology is, And some of the local services provided here in Humboldt County. I'm going to speak specifically to those that we provide in the city of Arcata and the recycling, processing, and marketing that we do here in Humboldt County that impacts the city of Arcata residents. But we'll be also leading another recycling discussion. Next, please, Mark. And we could talk about what's going to be done. This is when we're going to be talking about what can be done locally, how we can improve some of our systems, and also do a bigger picture, which is more of a legislative and sort of a bit of just sort of a message of usually what I come out with at the end of these discussions. So first, let me start. Recology is a 100% employee-owned company. I know a lot of times we get confused. We are a corporation, but we're a corporation that was formed with the interest of from our leadership to have employee ownership in a large company. It's always been our interest to preserve the middle class and have our employees be the benefactors of the work that we do. And so that's the difference between ourselves and ones that in a company that serves stocks, those that their business is geared towards stock ownership. We're an environmental service provider. We have integrated resource recovery operations, 40 of them in the state of California, Oregon, and Washington, serving 140 communities. We process 208 million tons of material a year. 600,000 tons of that is recycling. Another 800,000 tons is compost. Not all of our operations are processing operations. Next, please. Locally, we are employers of 129 employees here in Humboldt County that range from laborers to drivers, customer service people, managers, and such. Wide variety of careers here. We're operating 7 collection contracts, one of them being, they're called franchise agreements to the listeners. One of them being with the city of Arcata. They're all a little bit different from each other in the agreements and how they're set up. We have 2 transfer stations where it's much like the Humboldt Waste Management Authority, one in Fortuna and the other one at Redway. 6 container sites, which are super mini transfer stations, I guess you would call them, but they're out in the hills out there, but they're basically a big debris box where somebody is attendant one day a week, so people have the ability to remove their garbage if they live way out there. We have 1 recycling processing facility, which is probably more accurately called a material recovery facility here in Humboldt County, and I call it the recycling processing facility because that's what most people call us here, and we're located here in Samoa, where the Arcata Community Recycling Center had once been. Next, please. So Recology Arcata primarily, and I'm going to primarily talk about what people get for the rates. We operate the franchise curbside collection for residential and commercial customers. We have 4,042 residential customers, 476 commercial customers, and serve 140 apartment buildings here. We provide garbage recycling and bulky item pickup for the residential part of those areas. And those are all built into the rates, and the rates are set by the city council and come before you every year for review. We also, as part of the rates, provide city services and city cans and work to remove the garbage from the civic properties here. We're also operating limited, well, it's not limited, but it's for everybody, curbside green waste collection program. It was started by the Arcata Garbage Company as a pilot program, and we've continued to do that at just the collection fee around $4 a month. We also provide some limited customer communication. I'm going to get more into detail here in a minute. And some people may not know how rates change and what part of the rates are what's in their rates. Mostly the contract that we have as City of Arcata is a lot of our rate changes are affected by the consumer price index. So we're allowed to adjust our rates by CPI every year. and also adjust the rates through a pass-through cost. One of the biggest ones being tip fees. We pay $129.01 per ton to the Humboldt Waste Management Authority of the material that's collected in the city of Arcata, and that makes up about 40% of what the rates are for the public. COVID has had its impacts to the collection in the city of Arcata, and one of them, the first thing that happened is that we recognized is that in all of our contracts, there's a section in there that's called force majeure. So it's something that is in a contract where a contractor may not be able to fulfill the requirements of the contract due to some sort of disaster, floods, those kinds of things. And so we enacted that with the pandemic, not knowing what was going to happen. We were concerned about whether or not we were going to be able to cover all of our services. And one of the things that came up right away that we were having difficulty navigating around was the bulky item pickup. So we suspended that for a few months, but we've brought it back, and so we're providing that service again because we were able to implement some safety measures and get some information out to people on how they could prepare their items, or be able to provide that when people order the service. We have been having labor force strains because of COVID. We have vacancies. Probably all of you are aware of that in your own other businesses where not too many people are applying for jobs out there in the workforce, and drivers of garbage trucks are very hard to find. Drivers in general are very skilled workforce. So we have been experiencing some labor strains. We haven't lost anybody, but there's been people who've been concerned about their health and the health of their family members and have had to take measures to be away from work. Another thing that's happened is that we've been seeing customer counts decreasing in the city of Arcata as a result of COVID. We have had since April 1st, we've had only 15 residential decreases in out there of the 4,000, but we've had 109 decreases to the commercial customer base. So we're feeling what you're feeling as well, where there's not as many businesses being open, not as much garbage or people there. And so that's been since April 1st, and we're tracking that. Another thing that we've been seeing is that because people are at home more, and we haven't been seeing people increase their garbage accounts because they're home more, but people are still having space problems to get the garbage taken away. We've been seeing an uptick in contamination of the recycling that we're collecting at the curbside. People don't have a choice but to put that in there. I understand, and it's so that we are seeing an effect, and it's not just in Arcata, it's everywhere. So that we are seeing that. We started processing the recycling in September 5th of 2018, shortly after the Solid Waste of Willits contract ended with HWMA. And we bid on, and actually we got the contract to do the recycling processing for most areas of Humboldt County. So we've been starting that from September 5th, 2018. Next, please. Next, please. Mark?
All right. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay.
Got it.
Last year, some of you were in attendance to this meeting when we presented to the Waste Authority of what we did the first year of processing and marketing. We processed member agency tonnage, which is Arcata, Eureka, County of Humboldt, Rio Dell, Blue Lake, Ferndale, all the member agencies that are part of the HWMA. We processed 12,620 tons of recycling through the Samoa facility. We did an additional 4,500 tons from non-member agency material. That's origins, meaning the other Humboldt County, that would be Fortuna, who is not a member agency, Del Norte County, who, as you know, is up in the north. They don't have their own recycling processor up there, and Ashland, Oregon. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Next slide, please. So the first thing we needed to do when we started processing the materials, we really needed to get a good handle on what the material was. So traditionally, when we would go and pick up curbside material all over Humboldt County, Arcata had always been somewhat separated. We had to stop mixing the jurisdictional materials so that we could be able to report correctly on how much material was coming from each jurisdiction, so we could set up pass-throughs of the rates accordingly. So we were able to do that, and we accomplished that in the first year. We also had to look at what is that material like. So we have two ways of looking at the material that's coming in, and one of them is called, we call it the quantitative audits, and these are pretty much like the surveys that you've heard about what people do and looking at garbage, what's in it. So that's performed at the front end as soon as a garbage recycle truck comes in. So what we do is we grab a sample, weigh that grab, we sort it. Then we weigh all the sorted material and then calculate percentages of what that material is. So that then we report that back to the Humboldt Waste Management Authority and also to your staff if it's in your area. We also do another type of survey, which is a qualitative survey, which is kind of like a look at the material as it comes in. It's not as scientific, but it gives you kind of a good idea of what the quality of the material is. And it's done by a program called Go Canvas, and I'll show you an example of that here in a second. This is a good that's a good program for looking at curbside materials and making quick judgments, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So this is kind of like what mixed recycling looks like when it comes in. Looks a lot like garbage. So if you could go to the next slide. Here we have, what you're looking at here is a culmination of all the samples, the qualitative audits that we've taken from all member agencies only of the incoming material since we started. We've done 41 samples of that material from 2018 to date. This is, again, incoming material. And you can see what the composition of it is, that the larger proportion of that material is fiber, that's old corrugated cardboard is what OCC means, and paper. 15% of it is glass, and you see down from there. The next biggest percentage, or the second biggest percentage of the material that we get incoming is trash. So altogether, 18.66% of the material that is coming into our facility comes in as trash when it comes in. And that's kind of an important thing when we're talking about rate making. When we originally made the rates for the pass-throughs to our rate payers, we based on our rates on 15% contamination. And that was outgoing material, not incoming. So 15% of the tonnage was assumed to be at the garbage price of $129.01. The Waste Authority has picked up that 15%, and so that 15% has not been part of the rate that's been charged to the customers. The Waste Authority is picking up that, and we've been shouldering the rest. Can you go to the next slide, please? So I have here, what I'm showing you here is what the sample sizes were and how they compare to the rest of the jurisdictions that are contributing to the sorting facility here. The member agencies is the highest at 18.66% with 41 samples. And Del Norte, we've only done 3. We do enough for them because they have to report to get CRV value for themselves. They're at 11.35%. They do a considerable amount of pre-sort before they send it down here in trucks to make the trucking efficiency. So they take out what is obvious garbage. 4.29% is Ashland, Oregon. They've been doing a lot of campaigning out with their community for years and years. They don't touch their material before it's sent to us. It's just dumped on the floor, put in a truck, and sent to us. And that's the kind of material that they are able to give us. For the rest of the county, it's about 11.86%. Next, please. So over the years, I've been able to kind of pull out what the sample sizes are by jurisdictions and who's contributing. And you can see, you know, there really isn't anybody that's really, in the beginning, I'm going to say in the beginning from 2018, you might say, why has our contamination gone up so much? Well, the reason why is because we had the Arcata's recycling had always been coming to the Samoa facility. So when we were going to take on the contract, immediately we started doing the audits of the material, and they were done in the summertime. And my guess, this is just a guess, is that a lot of that material was people that had been living in the community for a long time. They may have already had a lot of the messaging that has been put out there for the years. Then we start seeing people that are starting to use the system that might be renters or people that are not from this community and accustomed to recycling a different way than we do. You start seeing higher counts in the years that are, you know, during the year when the school year happens. So it went from 11, 24, and a little bit better recently at 22%. Eureka is currently at 23, and so is the county. And I just lumped Rio Dale, Ferndale, and Blue Lake together because there haven't been that many samples. They're very small. This is what that Go Canvas looks like. That program that we use is kind of like a snapshot. It's a good tool to use to kind of get an idea of what kind of contamination you're seeing, getting some photographs of it. You can kind of make sort of like an educational guess about, you know, what the level of contamination is and whether this should be an acceptable load or not. This is kind of the tool that we would perhaps use in the future at the curbside to look at and to document people's quality of material as we're picking it up. You can go next. This is kind of contamination. I just thought I'd show you the kind of contamination we see. We get guns, we get bullets, get big old pieces of madrone. We can go next. We've gotten money. I wish we got that more often, but that only happened once, and the guy was looking for it, so we had to give it back. This is what you see most of the time. You see people, I don't know, there's always a lot of containers that have a lot of liquids in them. A lot of times it might be hazardous liquids. Paul Newman would roll over in his grave if he knew his product was half full and it was wrecking a bunch of recycling. But this is the biggest problem that we have. I don't know if the assumption is that we have someone that cleans them out and goes on, but there's just so many of them. That's trash. This was just the other day. I took a picture of this for this presentation. August 28th, 2020. Those were 2 6-yard bins sitting side by side, and that's the stuff that came in the curbside material, commercial and residential. Did you skip one? Oh, there we go. So again, going back to what I said earlier, is that the processing fee is based on 15% outgoing residual garbage, and that Waste Authority has covered the cost to that up to the 15% residual. That's the 15% of the tonnage that's assumed to be residual. It's actually much more, and with that we've absorbed the cost of the difference. What happens with the incoming material when you saw that 18.66% average, that stuff just gets all like this together on all the good recycling, the paper and all that stuff. It just breaks open, splatters all over the place, and it fouls the recycling that goes up the line because you're pushing material and you're processing it and gets in contact with each other. So it's damaging the material that we can send to market. So just as an example, the outgoing residual rate for July 2020 was 21.31%. So you see how it amplifies. So there's a factor that we could use for member agency material that 1.33 to put at whatever the contamination level is to be able to decide what we need to be charging. Next, please. So where are the commodities going? This is kind of a pie chart of where we've been sending our material. We're trying to find the most domestic markets as possible. To support domestic markets is important because there aren't very many out there. You see that there's a small chunk that goes to China. I'll talk about that in a minute. But these are just pretty much everywhere where we're shipping things. So you can imagine what the cost is to send things to the port and then send it there. Next, please. I just thought I'd go over this really quickly with the National SORM timeline from 2017. I know a lot of you are aware of this. The National SORM refers to China. The United States, I'm not saying that Arcata or Recology has done this, but just in general had been sending recycling to China that was, over 30% contaminated with garbage, basically marginalizing this country by dumping our garbage there and saving money by not paying for that activity by doing that. They said enough and give us a bunch of warnings. And by 2018, they said, we've got really strict standards now. We're not going to take your stuff anymore. So pretty much the market kind of fell for everyone. Is the reason why people are now having to pay for recycling. Could you go next? So I just put this pie chart in there just to show you that about 41% of the material in the blue bin has a negative value. So it costs us more to ship it to market to have it recycled than it does than we get back from revenue. Here's the impact just in 2018. You went from a high in February 2017 of $105 per ton for mixed paper down to $2.50. It was a huge, huge hit to the industry and to recycling. And since then, all the other countries are following suit. They don't want to be the ones that are going to be taking the garbage. So we're just now finding different places to send it. Plus, they don't have capacity to take it. So they're following the example. Many of the other countries are saying the same thing. India, Indonesia, many of them. There are some fiber destinations reopening in the United States. Those seem to be the easiest ones to open, but the prices continue to be depressed. So it's still difficult to get good, reliable incoming material. But what's helped is that we did a retrofit of the sort line. And so we've been able to clean the paper. This is very, very clean paper. And it's done all pretty much mostly by mechanical means, but you still get a little bit of plastic, and that's still unacceptable in the markets. But the facility, this facility in Humboldt County was the first facility to meet the standards to send materials to China at the 0.5% contamination rate. First facility in the state of California, even in the United States, that was be able to do it, and it was because of this sort line. And it improved efficiencies. Before we had to slow the line down, there's sort of like a fast, slow switch to it. We were doing about 4 tons per hour. We went up to 12 tons per hour so that more material could be processed. And so there's less overtime costs, which helps. We had a cleaner material output. And so rather than doing the mixed paper that was at that $2.50 that dropped to that, we've been able to market our material as old newspaper grade number 8, which is about as high as you can get. Currently, this month, they are paying $100 a ton, which is really good, versus $50 a ton. That's twice as much as you would get for the dirty paper going to maybe another country. We also, with our retrograde, put in a glass crusher, so there's less airspace in the glass, but it does cost more to ship the glass. It costs more to ship the glass without the airspace, even though you're getting more from the glass to the next processing to the people that buy it from us. So there was kind of an even out, so that we were able to make that easy, that the prices work that way. We're also selling the cardboard at OCC 11 and OCC 12 recently. That's old corrugated cardboard. That is normally MRF generated stuff is about $75 a ton. Now we're at $120 and $170 a ton. And we're doing much better. And we've also improved safety for the site. So, with less touching and more mechanicals means it's been better. We employ 30 people here total. 20 make around at least minimum wage and more. We're also have freight to market costs, as I brought up before, is we pay about $1,200 per load for glass to go out of here. It goes here domestically. And we take it maybe every day that we're operating. We're exporting, when we export paper and cardboard, it takes us $1,300 a load. That's about 20, each one of these is about 22 tons a load. Domestic cardboard is $1,100 to ship it out. And plastic and metals cost about $1,050. So I put this in here so that you guys can appreciate that it costs a lot of money to move this material out of here. So what we do here locally to message to the company, to the users of their system, is when somebody's a new user, we're provided their information, we send them what's recyclable and what's not. And it's really, really, really difficult to say what's recyclable and what's not anymore. But I'll get into that in a minute. But we do just basic information. We also have a website that's whatbin.com, where you can actually say what it, like somebody might say, what do I do with a garden hose? And it will say garden hose, and then it'll say, put it in your garbage can. Then we also put out a general message that we want things to be clean and dry, empty, no bagged recycling, no loose plastic bags, no textiles, and no styrofoam, because those are the things that we find the most. And we've also, I'm going to show you a picture of this in a minute, but we've started to incorporate new recycling cart lids as we're doing repairs on our equipment. We're putting new lids on them that have a message embossed in it in plastic, so they don't get yucky and unreadable. We developed a new oopsie tag, and I think that Mark might have sent you guys a copy of one of those, what they look like, because it wasn't coming up well in the PowerPoint. But that was developed by the city of Eureka for their programs, and it gives some good pictures of the kind of things that are recycling. That's something for the drivers to use so that it can communicate to the customer about why there's a problem with the recycling. So there's an example in there. So the city of Arcata is starting to use them as well.
I'll pop
So
that up.
far we have,
I'll bring that up. So.
yeah. So far, since we've been doing that since April, we've put out 592 communications to customers about contamination, only contamination in the recycling. So it's kind of, I know this is a poor picture. I must have done it without my glasses on, but this is sort of how the lid looks. I know a lot of people think it's a sticker, but it's actually a plastic embossed. It's integrated into the lid. And so as it's got some pretty good, easy messaging that stays nice and bright and current. And recycling isn't going to change much from here, in the future. If people could just do these things, we'd be golden. What's next? So what can be done? We locally, we need a coordinated, consistent messaging and outreach program. What gets a little bit difficult for the collection company and waste authority and all the rest of us is that it seems to be pretty fragmented on how to communicate to the customers and outreach, and want to make sure that it's consistent among the city of Arcata, Eureka, and the county. So if somebody calls us for a question, or somebody visits a website, they're going to get the same answer. Or the answer is going to look the same. So that's something that we really need to get to. And we always need to get to this, back to our zero waste culture that we have and we love in this community. That's got to be the first thing that we talk about, is not making the waste in the first place and showing people what they can do instead. And we also need to have the communities work with Recology to support procedures on what to do with the problem addresses. We do have the oopsie tag systems and we communicate with them, but what do we do from there? We really don't have a way of leaving it and then charging them, or dump it, then charge it, or take them off the list. Do you want to do that? So, and those kind of things are probably going to have to be in an agreement or in an ordinance or something. That's when using something like a Go Canvas program would be good, so that we could document what the problem is at the curbside. And then that way the customer can say, well, you just dumped it because you're trying to make money for yourself. So we want to make sure that we cover ourselves for that. And develop more and better resources, and particularly to help local manufacturing making better choices about the packaging that they're making, so that we are actually, if something has to go into the recycling stream or the composting stream, it is actually compostable and actually recyclable. But who's going to do it and who's going to fund it? That's always the question, because much of the stuff that I've just talked about is not integrated into your garbage rates. You know, it has not been part of either the garbage rate or in the recycling processing agreement. The Waste Authority does it, but we really need more focus and a funding source for it. So what the bigger picture is that we need to support addressing the problem of plastics and circular economy. There was AB 1080 and SB 54 that was heard very late on Monday before the state session closed. They both died. They were plastic circular economy initiatives that were in front of them, and they were identical. They had to do with, proper packaging, labeling, and that the people who were making the packaging had to ensure that this packaging was indeed recyclable. And it died. The Senate bill died by just 4 votes. It was just so close, but it is kind of good that it got that, at least that far. We're trying to get some support for a 2022 California Plastics Ballot Initiative. I know at one time somebody asked, what is Recology doing to fight this? Recology, the corporate office, put $3.2 million toward getting signatures and putting together a ballot initiative that would fight the problems with plastics. I can supply that information to you and everybody else on the council. But it is a huge, huge problem that we can't ignore any longer. These are some recent whoopsie, my thing went dead here. Recently, these are articles that just came in with the last couple of days. And now that we don't have a destination for plastics as a problem, Miramar is having a problem with plastics. And there's this idea that big oil, who are the people who are responsible, who are really the plastic manufacturers, are planning to send that material to Africa. You know, that's not good, and we need to get exposure to that. There's also criminal investigation, recycling scams that the Interpol is looking at right now. So these are some good resources for people to look at to find these articles. It's really a dirty business. What's next, Mark? So, and this kind of this kind of talks to what the support of SB 54 is. And again, I already spoke to this, but it also incentivizes market development for recyclable plastics, which is what this community really needs, and it would be helpful to everyone and the ratepayers. Let's go next. And then the ballot initiative, again, this was another, I expanded on that earlier. We can go to the next slide. So plastics, I always say stuff like this. It's just, this is something that I put in all my presentations to talk about plastics, how many times around the earth plastic that we produce is. There are 48,000 different kinds of plastics in the world. And you see the numbers 1 through 7, that doesn't mean that it's recyclable. And many of the containers don't even have that number anymore, or they squish all those things together and then that makes the thing unrecyclable. 20,000 plastic bottles are purchased per second. 12 plastic bags have a 12-minute use for most people, but stay in the environment. I don't know how they estimate this, for 350 years. The average person uses 880 plastic shampoo bottles in their lifetime. Can you imagine in Europe, for a population of 4,000, multiply that by 4,000 people in a lifetime, how many plastic shampoo bottles alone that the residents of the city of Arcata are generating? There has to be better choices. There's 185 pounds of plastic per person a year. There's another plastic straw thing that you probably have seen a billion times, about 5 million plastic straws a day. But it's out of control. And this is a photograph I took at a local grocery store just the other day. Look at this. You're looking at an organic product that's packaged in plastic. I don't get it. It's like you put it in a plastic bag that has to be put in a landfill. I mean, if I made an organic process, I'd be angry that it would be in here. And that's just and Humboldt is a great place for setting an example. My husband recently has undergone treatment for cancer. The other day I thought, well, I'm going to prepare for him if he's going to have, any side effects for that. So I went to a local dispensary thinking, oh, I'll go buy him some marijuana and some papers and stuff and roll up a cigarette for him. But, you can't even find papers in a dispensary right now in those old rolling machines. It's not like when we were kids, when your mom hid it up in the closet and you rolled your own, they rolled their own and sticks and seeds and stuff, poked holes in it. Now they come pre-rolled and packaged in these containers, plastic containers that are just ubiquitous. And I'm sure these people who are manufacturing these things for people's use are concerned about keeping people from being able to get in them. And they are looking at the bottom of it and they see a recycling symbol. But really, if we could educate the people that are here locally about packaging they use for their products, that would really go miles and be a good example for everyone else. So look at that, plastic. Neither one of those things is recyclable. We're just a good place to set an example. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
When you talk about the 41 samples you took, excuse me if you mentioned this, but what does a sample look like? Is it a can from a customer? Is it a truckload?
When the truckload comes into the facility, we do random, that's the oopsie tag. We'll do on random days, we'll take a truckload and we'll take a big scoop and take pieces of the pile from front to back. And so that we have a sample of the load for the day. And then we'll do the analysis on that. We weigh it, we weigh what that is, the total load, and then we weigh what's inside of it and pick it apart and then measure what it is, and then apply whatever we find as the sample and load toward the entire load as what the estimate of what the contamination is. It's these sampling events, I don't know if I said it earlier, when the state comes to check on the numbers, that we have to supply that information to the state as well for CRV. They take 4 hours to do the exact same thing. So it's not like, it's not a quick process.
And then I guess, how do you determine which trucks to sample? I mean, if the truck's, been servicing primarily an area with a lot of apartments versus neighborhoods versus commercial, is it just very random?
Well, we have routes that are set up in certain neighborhoods every day. And so what we do is we know where that truck has been that day. And when we're reporting for that route for that day, we're saying this is what we collected in that area for that day. And you're right, some of it might, and we want to be efficient of how we pick it up. Some of them may be apartments, some of them may be houses, but it's in a certain area. It's in a block of area where there's efficient pickup.
Thank you. Another question is, do you guys have any kind of program or any, process for when trash cans, recycling containers get vandalized with graffiti? Like how can a customer, get a new can?
They can call us to have it replaced if it's vandalized. The drivers will mark down on their route logs if it's something that they feel can't be usable, and would try to fit it in the schedule to get it replaced. Since COVID, the people who make our totes, we haven't been able to get new ones to replace them. So it would take somebody to actually take them and scrub them out. So we would pick them up, change them out with another one, and then scrub them out and put it back. There are programs in some jurisdictions where graffiti programs, not just on cans, but on buildings, people are able to add that onto their garbage service. So it's part of a service that Recology provides, just in areas where there's high graffiti area.
Okay. And then, yeah, and you talked a lot about like the 15% that Recology kind of covers on some of the costs, and just the declining cost of, or the declining price of recyclables, and just some of the different numbers in the industry. And I'm just wondering, what is Recology's profit margin?
The 15%, first I want to let you know, the 15% is paid for by the Waste Authority. We pick up whatever's between the 15 and the 18.66%. That's what we've been doing. Our profit margin in general, it depends on the contract. So the contract spells out what we're able to make in margin. So in the contract with the Waste Authority, there is 20% profit margin for that. The thing is that when there's changes in the market, or there's changes that impact the cost of collections, or changes in the market, we can only come to the jurisdiction to ask for a change in our rate one time per year. So it's different than retail. So if your milk is costing you $3 versus $2, and then it goes down to $2, or it started at $2 and goes back to $3, and you can't start charging $3 until the public process has gone through its process. The thing with the Waste Authority, the way that our contract is with them, is that we set up a set of guidelines for them to review, to see what our revenue was, what our expenses were, and then there's an allowable margin to go on top of that. So that's how we come up with the rate. So look and see what we did the year before, so that we can kind of project to see what happens in the future. That way, if prices go way up, then so do your price comes down. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks. I appreciate. Yeah, that's all my questions, and I appreciate your presentation. It was very concise. Thank you.
Good.
Councilmember Pereira.
I don't have any comments or questions. Thanks, Linda.
No. I gotta be on the hot spot.
Okay, Vice Mayor Patino.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So even though you have a contract that has fixed prices, if just hypothetically, if you were going to pass through the reduced cost or increased cost and reduced value from these high contamination rates, could you project what that would turn into for a typical residential customer if that were passed through?
For the city of Arcata, and I wish I had said this earlier, the recycling processing, the portion of recycling processing and with the impacts of contamination last year ended up being, and mind you, CPI was around 3%. The increase that, because we were adjusting for the number of tons that we had projected we would collect and what we actually collected, the rate increase was 1.08%. So it wasn't very much. It was only on the way the city of Arcata's rates are, it only impacts the recycling can. So if if you're doing it that way, you're kind of shrinking the place where you're going to get a high impact to that system. And it's also going to depend on what the disposal costs are. So I think 3% of, let's see, you guys collected, what did I say, 2,500 tons. It's either 3% of 2,500 tons times $129 has to be, that's the revenue recovery that needs to happen through the rate system. And it's probably very small portion of what the rates are, you know, maybe a couple of cents, 5 cents.
Yeah, so you're saying that the this higher contamination rate is, if you passed it through, would be a fairly small impact on what
Yeah,
you would have to include in a subsequent.
I'd have to do more analysis to it.
I want to make sure that we're really clear on a couple things. So excuse me for jumping in here, but all of the member agencies, you know, entered into a memorandum of agreement so that we would be able to you know, combine all the tonnage and then solicit for the contract that we have. And in that agreement, each city council said, we are assuming an 8% contamination rate. And everybody was actually wanting to see it at 4%, but we went for 8%. And that was the goal, that each of the city staff and, you know, the agencies were going to be working with the customers to keep their contamination rate below 8%. When we went through the contract negotiations, HWMA recognized that a significant portion of cost to the customers who had previously not been having to pay processing fees. So we went from 0 to a proposed, initially it was $81, I believe. And so we said one of the largest costs is the disposal of that residual material. We will absorb that 15% in a way that helped to incentivize people to make sure that they are continuing to recycle. Because, you know, we're trying to keep recycling less than the disposal of solid waste. So HWMA has been absorbing 15%. Residual is closer to 18% in some cases, or 20, or 24% sometimes. And the difference is what Recology is absorbing. And Recology is saying we need to find a way to find a balance. HWMA cannot continue to do this in perpetuity either. We're currently absorbing 15% of that cost, the bulk of the cost. And we need for all of our member agencies to be putting in the effort, you know, individually as well as regionally, so that we can begin to improve the overall quality of material that Recology is running through that sort line, so that we can improve the material that's getting put out into the market. So it's all interrelated, and we all play a role in that. But I want to make sure that we're not getting lost with the numbers, because what's really important is we're all taking on a piece of it. And we need to be working together collectively to address some serious issues around the quality of the recyclable materials that are coming into the blue bin.
I want to just say, add to what Jill said, was I took just what I know is what the revenue requirement is for supplying the services, the services for the city of Arcata, just the city of Arcata. The contribution that the Waste Authority is donating to the ratepayers, to each ratepayer on average for this, is about $1.07. To keep $1.07 of that out of the ratepayers' pockets. That's what they would be paying if the waste in the city of Arcata, and with their size of their rate base, that's about what they're helping you with.
So the other question is, what type of training do we need to do for our cities, and or what type of incentive or disincentive structure do we need for for our customers in order to improve the or to lower the contamination rates, these extremely high contamination rates, because clearly some customers are great, they have very low contamination rates, but where other people have far beyond the average contamination rate and are making an excessive contribution to this very high contamination rate. So it's, in what way do we need to work together in order to bring this down and to motivate and educate these very high contamination rate customers to change their behavior, or if they don't change their behavior, for there to be consequences, financial or otherwise, in maintaining these very high contamination rates.
In my mind, we need a tool in an ordinance or in our agreement, to be able to tell us when we can leave a can and pick it up and not service that customer anymore, or to charge them as garbage. That's what we need. And because right now it's not possible for us to we get to a point where we've given people several attempts, try to contact them, send them letters, but at some point we'll have to pull their cans so that they're not fouling it for others, if they're the problem, or have the garbage man pick it up and charge them for it.
And I would add, there's it's actually a multi-pronged approach, and what Linda is hitting on here is the hammer, right? So what else can we be doing? We need to be working with the educational component. HWMA does have an agreement where we have 4R Planet going into classrooms and conducting education in terms of learning blocks throughout the county. Different schools are also undertaking, if they're able to find funding for these activities. There's a lot of outreach, but it's been a little sporadic. I think that the city of Eureka in particular, they have sort of this cadre of folks that have been managing a lot of their graphics division, which is part of that Oopsie tag, in addition to their social media sites. And they've been really active, and they've done some really great work. And one of the things that's been really wonderful is that not all agencies have the same resources available. So when you start talking about some of the smaller cities, they simply don't have the staff or the resources to do that. City of Eureka staff is saying, hey, here, we've developed this, we can share it. So that's helping to develop a more unified approach as we are doing radio ads, when we're doing print ads, and when we're doing any sort of graphic outreach. And that's going to be a really necessary component. One of the things that I know Linda has had some real challenges with is each one of those franchise agreements is different. And they're all limiting in some way. So what she and her staff may be able to do in Arcata, they may be restricted from applying the same approaches to interacting with Eureka residents. And that might be really different than how they're handling things in Ferndale. So it's a lack of uniformity in terms of how we are able to make that outreach with customers. And then, of course, I completely echo what Linda is identifying as far as the ability to not pick up containers and or to have it charged as solid waste, because bottom line is, when it runs through the sort line, it ends up amplifying the amount of waste, and we are paying for it again. It's cheaper to go ahead and put it in the garbage can so we can handle it right the first time. Because when you factor in all the cost of picking it up curbside, running it through the processor at that higher amount, only to have the end product going into solid waste, it's just building upon. And we need more people to understand it's not really a complex system. It's actually pretty simple when you start looking at it. We actually just need people to focus and learn about how we're handling our trash and our recycling and our organics, and where our opportunities are for reducing and reusing all around.
Right. There's some things that are effective through education. There's some things that are effective through financial consequences. So I'm not sure to what degree this situation is one or the other. because you have
Yeah.
some situations in which people have loads of information and still don't change their behavior.
Yeah.
I was just say, yeah, I want to talk more about hammers. I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense that if someone's, we feel like that they're putting the wrong material in the wrong container, that and it's costing everybody else down the line, that they should have an expectation of a financial penalty. And I don't how that would be implemented if it's on their bill. And it just seems like you wouldn't have to do a whole lot of it for the word to get out, and hopefully have some positive effects on people's behavior, the way they're using their cans. And I just think it'd be funny if they went outside one day and their can was gone, like we repossessed it in the middle of the night.
I've thought about buying some that are clear to see if I can find some that are clear and giving it to people who have contamination issues.
I like that.
But I don't know if they make them yet.
I'd like to add, in the sense of, it would be really great if we could be getting all of the jurisdictions to want to take some similar approaches. That way, when Recology is needing, or even Humboldt Sanitation, if they are taking actions, then it's going to be consistent amongst all the jurisdictions. And that will start to help shift overall behavior of residents in the county.
I think it also helps what we were talking about earlier today, about in another discussion with Jill. I think that, more consistency we can get out there, the more trust we can get with the community when we start looking at other initiatives that we need to pass for waste, so that they can trust that the message is going to be the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you do education, but part of the education is, once we've implemented consequences, we let people know that those consequences exist, or that we have a grace period, and at the end of the grace period, then the consequences start going into effect.
Yeah. But yeah, and you can get out of the corner if you improve too.
Yeah. So I don't know if we have any people from environmental services that are on the Zoom call right now who would like to comment on this, or other staff members who would like to comment on this and the issues that Ms. Wife and Ms. Duffy have raised.
Yeah, Marc-Andre, just briefly, I mean, the contamination is one of the main things we wanted to highlight and elevate to the city council and the public as a troubling trend. So that was one of the goals tonight, as well as to, highlight the state of the recycling markets and just the overall picture. We are going to be talking, rates and enhancements here in the next few months. So we just wanted the council to get a picture of where things are now, and ask questions. So yeah, I'm not sure what all the factors are that are leading to this, but it's a trend that we can't sustain. So we have to get back and busy and organized with all the other entities to send a message, and tonight's our beginning to push in that direction.
So with that, recommendations include potential penalties, financial or consequences, such as being charged for garbage on things that are put out ostensibly as recycling.
It could be. I mean, ideally, you don't, if you use the education and the carrot before the hammer, but I'm not sure what factors are leading to this right now, but it's jumped up, but it's not just the last few months, right? It's been a trend for since 2017. So it's not a COVID era type thing, we don't think, but it's in a town especially that has a turnover and new customers all the time. I think people are used to, I think it was Linda mentioned that, systems in some cities they come from, and they may not catch on to how things are done here. right off the bat. So we got to try to deal with the new customers, I think, as a priority.
Do we have any further comments from council then?
No, thank you, Paul Patino. I feel like the what we've discussed about the warnings, the charging as garbage should be advertised clearly so people understand that if their recycling is contaminated, they will very possibly be charged a garbage rate for that can. I think that needs to get out there, and maybe some of the big items like liquid containers and plastic film should be noted as one of the big contaminants. Thank you.
All right. Do we have any comments from the public on this item?
Remind the public to either raise their hand in Zoom format or press *9 if you're on a phone call in, if you want to make public comment or question on the solid waste and recycling item. I see no public comments.
All right. So I don't think there's any action for the council to take on this, is there?
I know this was just the first night. The idea was to get an overview and then to think about it for a couple of weeks, and then we will schedule another council discussion to get additional public input and input from the council about other items that you'd like to see as we start these discussions with Recology.
All right. So thank you to Ms. Wise and to Ms. Duffy to provide us some very useful information and to alert us to a deterioration in the quality of materials that people are putting out for recycling.
Always a pleasure.
If I could also add, I know that council members had the opportunity to receive the presentation that we gave last year. We do have on our website, which is hwma.net, at the About a box, a video. It's 11 minutes long, and it goes over the various activities that HWMA provides for the community. And I'm flashing on one of the pictures that Linda had, where it was a number of herbicides. I don't think there was, or other nutrients that were there. Those are items that are hazardous waste. And so if people want to take a look at the different services that HWMA provides, it's a pretty short video, and you'll get a sense of where those different kinds of materials that are currently landing in recycling, because people just don't know what to do with it. Take a look at what we have on our website. Maybe you'll find a more appropriate place to direct that to. So council members, of course, can take a look at that at any time. And it also helps to better explain. Linda and I get confused for each other all the time, which kind of cracks us up. And it's certainly the HWMA and Recology get interspersed. Last night on the news, they told about the CRV reopening for HWMA, and they threw up Recology's logo. So we're constantly kind of having to address that. But you know, if folks want to get a better sense of the different services that we each provide, I would encourage them to take a look at that.
Okay, well, thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
The next item is item C, introduction of ordinance number 1535, amending Conflict of Interest Code, Title II, Administration, Chapter 8, Conflict of Interest, Article 2, City Employees, Sections 2912E and 2915A. May I have a staff report, please, from City Attorney Nancy Diamond?
Good evening, Mayor and council members, staff, members of the public. Every 2 years, the council is required to review its conflict of interest code and make revisions as necessary to remain in compliance with state law. We are suggesting 2 revisions this year. One is to increase the threshold for disqualification due to receipt of gifts, and it would go up from $460 to $500 per 12-month period. And the other is to eliminate a position from the list of designated employees, and that is the position for transportation superintendent, because that position no longer exists. If the council introduces this ordinance tonight, we will bring it back for adoption at the next council meeting. Thank you.
Right, I will now ask for questions from council, starting with Councilmember Pereira.
No comments or questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Watson.
No comments or questions.
Vice Mayor Patino.
No comments or questions. Thank you.
And I have no questions. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak on this item?
We have one member that would like to speak on this item. We will bring him in. Go ahead, speaker.
I wanted to pay you folks a compliment on this topic. I've always found that Arcata, as far as any of you having a conflict that I've ever known of, step aside, leave the forum, follow correct procedures, protocols for this. I have a lot of angst with what happens in the county because they're on the opposite end of the spectrum. I've seen historically people, even now, we have a planning commissioner who is a CFO on a company deciding what his competition is going to go ahead and get permits or not for certain things. So I just wanted to pay you a compliment. Continue doing what you're doing, and again, this is one of the most important things as far as transparency and honesty. And I sure wish the county would pattern their actions after the city of Arcata's. I did wish to make a little comment. Now, you don't have a whole bunch of people lined up for this, but Estelle Farrell, when she runs these meetings and she has a queue with maybe 30 phone numbers in it, if you're doing star 67 and you don't have that number, it's a little hard to say, well, I'm trying to get a hold of this number or that number. So you may, the public, in my opinion, doesn't have a problem with you having access to the number as far as who's handling the meeting. So this is just something I've seen work in the other Zoom meetings. So thank you for the opportunity, and keep up the good work on conflicts of interest and avoiding them.
Thank you. We have no other public comment on this item.
Okay, we have a recommendation to introduce this ordinance, and I am ready for a motion from council, if any.
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance 1535, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the Arcata Municipal Code, Conflict of Interest Code, Title II, Administration, Chapter 8, Conflict of Interest Code, Article 2, City Employees, Section 2912E and 2915A, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I will do a roll call on this. Councilmember Pereira.
Aye.
Councilmember Watson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patino.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So thank you. So next is item D, a discussion of potential scope of social host ordinance. May I have a staff report, please, from Police Chief Ahern?
Yes, hi. I didn't realize I had to click on the video and the mute, so I apologize for the delay. Good evening, Mayor and Council and City staff. This is a staff report presentation on social host ordinance, and really an opportunity to start to have some discussion on all of your thoughts regarding how to make social gatherings safer here in Arcata. The staff report, it really outlines what social host is. It's a very specific ordinance. I did include some examples from Contra Costa County, for example, Santa Clara County. the city of Novato, and also the city of Eureka. And really what a social host ordinance is designed to do is to prevent underage drinking at parties. And the way you do that as a deterrent is by holding the host of the party accountable whenever there's alcohol being consumed by anyone under the age of 21 at a social gathering, for example, a house party. So, no other perhaps ordinance violation that's present. So it could be furnishing alcohol to a minor, or the minor themselves in possession of alcohol, drunk in public. All of those could still be, violations that are present. But there isn't an ordinance other than social host that specifically holds the host accountable for having that alcohol present at a party where there are folks under the age of 21 consuming. So basically, the social host ordinance requires the host to verify the age of all guests, to control access of alcohol so that anyone under the age of 21 does not have access. And it also requires the host to supervise the minors during that social gathering. Oftentimes, there's a cost recovery component as well, or you could even introduce like an administrative citation piece where in addition to perhaps some noise ordinances, there could be some administrative penalties. Many jurisdictions who have social hosts usually include, or they could include, some kind of restorative justice component as well, where they give the host who's been cited for a misdemeanor the opportunity to be diverted away from the criminal courts. But usually that involves some type of a victim impact panel and perhaps some education on, the effects of alcohol, and then usually some kind of a community service component as well. But tonight really was just an opportunity to introduce all of you to the social host ordinance, and to provide you a few examples of where they are in existence throughout the state of California, including right here in Humboldt County in the city of Eureka. Shifting just a little bit to, looking at, as some colleges and universities have opened up throughout the nation here during the COVID-19 pandemic. I think all of us have seen some videos of people at house parties or at social gatherings where there's a tremendous risk for transmission of the COVID-19 virus. At least from the videos that I saw, there was a tremendous amount of concern because of the lack of social distancing, no facial coverings, and really just what looked like to be a complete sort of disregard for what the COVID-19 virus could potentially do to those who are affected. So I wanted to just incorporate into the staff report the fact that our health officer does have an order in place that does apply to social gatherings. Now, it's not necessarily in conjunction with a social host. The social host ordinance itself sort of stands on its own, but this is a tool that we certainly can use here in Arcata to hold people accountable for not following the health officer's order. To basically, if you're outside, you've got to do either one of two things. You either have to stay at least 6 feet apart from those who are also present, or if you're unable to maintain that social distancing, you are required to have a facial covering on. So that is a misdemeanor violation of 120295 of the Health and Safety Code here in California. And as long as the health officer's order is in effect and that provision remains, then that's a citable offense. It's enforceable. We've had a lot of success here in Arcata with our posture of providing education in hopes of getting voluntary compliance. And for the most part, it's worked. We have not issued one citation yet, whether it's a social gathering, a party, or just being outside or inside for that matter, because people do comply once we remind them of their responsibility, not only to protect themselves, but to protect others as well. So as long as that health officer's order is in place, That is an option for the Arcata Police Department to utilize should we be at any social gathering where people are just not complying with the law. So with that, I will open it up to any questions or comments regarding, the potential to perhaps adopt some kind of a social host ordinance here in Arcata, or to utilize maybe the health officer's order, or maybe both. Thank you.
So, Vice Mayor Patino, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Do we know if Fortuna, the city of Fortuna, has a social host ordinance? And how about the county of Humboldt?
Well, I did check. I did internet research, and when I Googled Humboldt County, they immediately directed me to the city of Eureka's social host ordinance. I did not reach out specifically to Chief Day or to Sheriff Hansel to inquire, but nothing came up during the search regarding Fortuna. And again, Humboldt County's directed me right over to the city of Eureka's social host ordinance. So I could do some additional research though, sir, and get a definite answer.
Yeah,
on whether or not they have.
Now that we talked about Humboldt County, it'd be interesting that what effect could the Eureka's social host ordinance do for unincorporated Humboldt County? I mean, I don't think it has any bearing on it, does it?
I don't think it does. I think it just applies within the city limits.
Sure. Do you think there's an advantage to line up with Eureka's, align ourselves similar to City of Eureka, since their social host ordinance seems to be fairly new and looks pretty detailed? Maybe between the City of Eureka and City of Arcata, we can have some common understanding of what a social host ordinance would look like, and the county and Fortuna could follow.
Well, I mean, I think that's certainly a possibility, sir. But I do think there's a lot of value to having a social host ordinance, and to have one here in Arcata.
Yeah.
Separate from, the COVID-19 pandemic, having a juvenile diversion counselors, 2 of them here. We do have young people that are consuming alcohol, and it is dangerous. It's dangerous on a number of levels, including, over intoxication, the potential for people being assaulted, or to, at some point, become addicted, to the alcohol. So, when you are able to introduce legislation that holds the host accountable through a misdemeanor, that requires, upon being found guilty, the payment of certain levels of fines, depending upon whether or not they have, priors for that. I think that sends a strong message. And I think, that's an additional tool that'll help us combat, the underage consumption of alcohol.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Watson.
No, I don't have any comments or questions right now.
Councilmember Pereira.
Thank you, Chief, for your report and for bringing in examples from different city ordinances. I thought that was really helpful to see. I would be interested in us looking at a social host ordinance for Arcata. I think it is important to distinguish that we do have enforcement that can happen regardless of how we move forward with a social host ordinance when it comes to gatherings for COVID-19. So I do see them as separate, but I do think, I know it's something that my constituents and I have spoken about kind of over the years. It's come up as a topic of interest. So yeah, I would be interested in us moving forward, and perhaps, the Eureka one, I think, to Vice Mayor Patino's point, that might be a model to look at, unless I misunderstood what you were saying.
No, I agree. I think you're right. I think it's a good model to start with. And so we will, we'll get to work on exploring that and work with our city attorney on building a program for all of you to eventually take a look at.
I have a few. Well, thank you for your discussion so far, do social host ordinances ever include cannabis, or do they include controlled substances in addition to alcohol?
A traditional social host, sir, is really just alcohol based, so is there an opportunity, to build in some different elements that all of you feel like should be incorporated? I can certainly work with the city attorney on exploring those options.
So, if we were to include COVID behavior related to COVID, would that provide any additional public benefit in your opinion, or is it purely redundant given that the county health officer's directive? Do you see?
Well, if I'm understanding your question, sir, one is not a lesser included offense of the other. So, for example, if we had a social host ordinance in place and officers responded to a gathering where there was a violation of the social host ordinance, in addition to violations of the public health officer's order as well, we could cite for both. So, anything we can do, and I think you spoke about this earlier during the Recology presentation about trying to, change behavior, education, and if education's not working, there is value in enforcement, because really at the end of the day, what all of you are trying to do is protect the health and welfare, of people in Arcata. So I think there's room, for both. They can work on separate tracks. Or we can combine them in addition to other violations as well.
So I wasn't clear on the answer. So the question was, is the public health officer's order enough by itself as far as COVID-related behavior, or is there some additional value if we explicitly had a City of Arcata ordinance that included provisions related to COVID and unsafe behavior?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I misunderstood your question, sir. Unless there were other behaviors that all of you wanted incorporated in a local municipal code ordinance, the public health officer's order does give us a lot of latitude, especially from the social distancing and face covering perspective. So that is an enforcement tool that's available to us right now. Like I said, unless there were other behaviors, that maybe are not related to either social distancing or wearing of a face covering that all of you would like to see brought here to Arcata, then certainly we could work on a separate municipal code for that.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, do we have any members of the public who want to comment on this item?
We do have one member. If anybody else is interested, raise your hand or press *9. We'll bring in the first speaker. Go ahead.
I'm here tonight because you guys are probably feeling pretty lonely, and you might. No, I'm here because you have some very important topics, and this one is paramount. Strongly support you looking at this particular ordinance. I kind of support what Councilmember Pereira had there as far as bifurcating or having separate ones. The need for the masks may go away. You may fill it in with something else later. A big problem we've had in Arcata, and especially any town where you have a college, is you have a lot of underage people. And, the Josiah Lawson might be an example when I heard there was 100 people or whatever, and underage people. And back in my day, I'm old, we used to call it taking stuff and doing things, So I strongly support that, not just alcohol, but any other stuff, however you want to categorize that, which is basically drugs or things of that nature, be incorporated in here. And help the young people. I mean, I've been told there's 3 rules as far as your children is keep them alive, keep them alive, keep them alive. Sometimes it takes a village to do that. And so I strongly support moving forward. I also would like to see you bring whatever you're doing before Sheriff Billy and have that brought to his attention, because I think you're doing some good work here that the whole county could benefit from. Lastly, I would like to say, sound of a misdemeanor may sound like a small thing. I'm not a lawyer, but when you have a civil case followed up by any kind of a citation or criminal situation, that pretty well validates a civil case for damages. In other words, if somebody was injured or lost their life, it's a lot easier to get a civil judgment if you have a criminal, even a misdemeanor, showing the facts in the case. So strongly support this. We need to do the best we can within our community. Thank you for my opportunity to speak today.
Are there any additional members of the public who want to comment on this item?
There are no more members that would like to speak on this item.
So at this point, are there poll members of the council to see if any member of the council would like to make a motion to give direction to staff on this item? So starting with Councilmember Pereira.
Yeah, if a motion is necessary, I'm happy to make a motion to have staff come back with a draft social host ordinance, and perhaps using Eureka as an example.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. So starting with Vice Mayor Patino.
Yes.
All right, Councilmember Watson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pereira.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So thank you, Chief.
Thank you all.
Right, next is item E, and that Councilmember Watson requested this item, so I would let Councilmember Watson go ahead and explain his thinking on this and what he's looking for in direction for the city and the council.
Thank you, Mayor. I just noticed a lot of sidewalk weeds, primarily when it comes to just kind of stuff on the streets. Something that I think would significantly just make the city overall look better if we were able to put some attention into just some of the landscaping on public property, and things that might be, like hedges that are growing into the public right of way, and just general, I would just say beautification of the city. In addition to that, graffiti. I know our graffiti removal department has been in intense quarantine, and being Mayor Winkler. And so I have noticed an increase in graffiti around the city. And yeah, those are just kind of the two big things for me. And I know I'm sure there's other things we could come up with, but those are the two primary ones. And my thinking specifically was that if the city manager felt that we had some capacity to work on one or the other, that I'd be happy to try to organize volunteers to work on what was left over. And that's pretty much my synopsis of what I was thinking with this agenda item.
All right, Councilmember Pereira, do you have any comments on this item?
No, not at this moment. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Vice Mayor Patino.
Yeah, the Valley West monthly cleanup that we've reestablished with a city employee, it really has made a difference in Valley West. And I know it because I've been going regularly, and I noticed there's a lot less to pick up compared to when it started. And as far as the beautification efforts, if we could look at maybe one weekend day a month, and target maybe certain shopping centers, different parts of town, places that we've noticed where there, like Brett said, a lot of weeds in the sidewalk, or the gutters need to be cleaned, or the space between the street and the sidewalk needs to be weeded. Maybe we could target a part of town every month and just spend, like a few hour cleanup, invite the public, and just go out and do that particular area and then move it around. So yeah, I'd be willing to participate, and I think it's a great idea.
I think it's a really good idea that, I'm very frustrated that under the COVID situation that I feel constrained from doing the graffiti removal that I normally do. And the question I have for City Manager Deemer is, what staff capacity do we have to participate in this at this point? Either graffiti removal or vegetation removal.
So, we always have some capacity to do like a short duration, project to try to go in and do some cleanup, some effort in a particular area, and we can redirect resources to that. I do have to share that we are down more staff than we have been down really for the last 20 years when we adopted our budget. So when we look at vegetation management, most of that falls to our parks crew. They're down 2 full-time staff, and they would typically have 7 really full-time temporary staff in the summer, and they have none of those this year. So it is definitely unfortunate, but not surprising that we're seeing an increase in, some of the vegetation growth throughout the city, and even being just able to get around and empty garbage cans that are, parks in the marsh and the forest, which have had a real increase in use, which is a positive piece about living in our community during COVID, is that we do have a lot of great areas to access. So while I know staff really want to be supportive of trying to make everything happen in a year, I do want to caution this year that our resources are as slim as they've ever been. But, that being said, if there's a real specific area that we want to address and focus on for a period of time, we will work to redirect some resources to that.
To what extent can we utilize volunteers working in conjunction with staff of the city to do either graffiti removal or vegetation cleanup?
We've used them in the past for both. It takes some staff time to organize and support that, but I think the idea of standardize something once a month, and especially, during this period where people, I think, are interested in getting out, if we put some good social distancing plans in place, do maybe a stretch of road where people can spread out. I think we could come up with a plan like that to support some volunteer efforts. I'd have to think through how we would do that. We have reinstituted some trail volunteer days. I think we've done 1 or 2 now, but really just working through the social distancing aspect of that. But would be happy to work with Councilmember Watson or Patino on, that concept.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Mayor.
A motion from the council, or is, go ahead, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, I interrupted you. I was just going to say, I'd be happy to work with the city manager on it, trying to identify some areas. For me, we've talked about this in the past a little bit, as we, want to make sure we are putting our best foot forward with students and their parents, and as well as tourists. I'd like to start looking at it, since we've already got some effort going on in Valley West, to start with G and H Street, between the plaza and Northtown. And I don't know, to me, those would be, and I think a lot of that's, to me, H Street always looks pretty good to me. There's probably some areas, I guess I'm trying to say, even though they're kind of, it's kind of long stretches, I don't think that there's an enormous amount to do there. So I think it'd be manageable and reasonable to start looking at those areas first.
Yeah, Brett, I really appreciate your point of view, especially when we look at HSU, the bridge, Northtown. I think especially if we focused from, the plaza to the bridge and then maybe later look at extending that. But I think that's probably one of the first spots that people see that generally could stand some help, and the bridge included, the bridge and the area on the bridge.
No, I think you're right. I think the bridge should be lumped into that. I think you're right.
Karen, do you have enough direction, or do you need a motion from council?
Yeah, I think that's enough direction. Either way. But
I was just going to add one thing. We have the Northern Humboldt Employment Services crew back. We didn't have them for most of the summer, and there is a backlog for sure, and we haven't had the High Rock crew. So anyway, we can try to direct that crew on the weeds, the curb, the gutter, the right of way. That's what they do work on. So
great.
We fund them.
One thing that I've noticed in working on Northtown and the bridge in that area is when you're there working and you don't have a uniform on or anything, the students that walk by you, they notice and they appreciate it. When I was working there a few weeks ago, multi students came by and said, "Thanks for cleaning this up," and I think what an opportunity for us to engage with them. We have that whole bridge walkway that we could, maybe even sweep it, that would be something. So I definitely, I'm just supporting and reiterating. I think you're right about that in that part of town.
Cool. Yeah, so I think just for starters, just to work, I can just work with the city manager to just do an assessment and see what needs to be done and what we can do.
If it wouldn't be too difficult, one thing that I think that would be nice would be if we put out a sign where the volunteers were working, saying that this is being done from volunteers and from Arcata and other areas, just to give some visual recognition as people are walking or driving by.
Yeah, I think if we get a particular volunteer group, I think that would be reasonable to do that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Do we have any members of the public who want to comment on this item?
I don't see any members of the public that would like to comment on this item.
Okay, well, thank you, Brett, for bringing this forward. It certainly is. We especially during this difficult time want to have a good appearance of the city and have pride, have even more pride than we already have in our city. Next is oral and written communications. This time is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. Please raise your hand electronically, of course, or press if you are on the webinar, or *9 if you are on the phone line, if you would like to make a public comment.
Okay, we have one public comment at this time. We will bring him in. Go ahead.
Well, Karen, at least I'm consistent. I wish to do two things. As personally, and this is not with the Humboldt County Taxpayers League, because we don't endorse candidates. I was very pleased to see you two incumbents running again. It's been a rough term up there for you folks with everything going on, and I did feel sorry for some things. Maybe one good thing comes of this COVID. We don't seem to have the meeting shut down, and it's unfortunate that happened. But thank you for your service, and I hope the two of you get reelected there and you find a third. So now putting on my other hat as far as executive director of the Humboldt County Taxpayers League. I'm going to talk about the fire tax or Measure F, and I know you folks probably supported that. I wish I could have. I tried to work with them, and we just didn't seem to iron out a solution that we could support. Maybe in the future we will. So I wanted to bring forward a few things. The New Humboldt County Taxpayer League believes that those can least afford a tax or assessment should not be burdened. We also feel that a statement which was made, this is a quote from the fire department, your Arcata Fire Department, the new state-of-the-art fire station would remain open only part-time without full-time firefighter coverage, putting McKinleyville in the larger community district at risk. This is true, but they had the option. They chose to, hate to use the term, some people feel punish or play Russian roulette with the McKinleyville fire station when it could have closed the Mad River station or rotated the two Arcata stations. It bothers me that it was represented that the total annual charge for a single-family residence as $118. But that's only a portion of the tax. The actual total with the two taxes they have on it would be $206 per residence. A mobile home assessment was stated as being $90, when actually the actual fire tax that they pay in a mobile home would be $171. And here's an interesting thing. If you live in Eureka, the fire assessment for a resident or mobile home is $0. And you say, well, how could that be? Who's paying for it? Well, they have a sales tax, so everybody there pays for it. The people who can least afford it frequently don't pay sales tax, where if you're getting a brand new $60,000 truck or a brand new refrigerator or a large TV, those are the people who are actually paying for it. The Social Security people are paying very little. So I do have, have some angst with this. I really would like to see this come back, and I'm obviously trying to work with the fire department there, Justin McDonald, to try and come up with solutions that we can have service that's required. And we support 100%, the need. We just don't see this as being the practical solution. So thank you for me to speak on this particular topic, and also not Taxpayers League, but also endorse you people running. Thanks for your service.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who want to speak on this item?
I see no other members of the public that would like to speak this evening.
Next is council and staff reports. Item A, receive report on the city's coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security act funding, CARES, coronavirus relief fund. So could I please have a staff report from Director Starshevsky?
Good evening, Mayor, and good evening, Council. I would like to report that the city has become eligible to receive additional funding through the CARES Act. And this was related to the California budget being passed back in June. There was an additional allocation of federal funding for the state of California. And with that, the city of Arcata is receiving an additional $221,000. It's an allocation based off of our population. And the qualifying expenses that we will have to submit related to the CARES Act are for expenses that we incurred related to the COVID-19 response for our city from March 1st of this year through December 31st of 2020. So within the staff report, there is a chart that has information regarding the expenses that we will submit in report form to the state by September 4th to demonstrate our eligibility to receive the $221,000. And because of the COVID-19 impacts on the city, the largest fund that is impacted from our city budget perspective has been the general fund. To date, we have incurred $180,000 in expenses that are related to the COVID-19 impacts that we're eligible to be reimbursed for. And we have projections out through the rest of the fiscal year, well, through the rest of this calendar year through December 31st, where we will incur up to $297,000 in general fund related expenses. So just a quick update that we plan to submit for complete reimbursement of those costs. And we've already been pre-funded for 2 of those disbursements. So we've received to date about $73,000, which will go back into the general fund to reimburse for COVID-19 related activities. Are there any questions related to this?
Vice Mayor Patino, please.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pereira.
None. Thank you. I know it's a tough job you all have right now with the balancing the budget. So thanks for putting the CARES funding to good use.
Councilmember Watson.
I'm just wondering, so without this, we would have been negative, or now that if this is getting backfilled, is there a surplus?
So as part of what we projected for general fund for budget for this new fiscal year 2021, we were going to dip into the reserves by $316,000. So we will still have a dip into the reserves even with this expense reimbursement, but it'll be a lesser impact on that. So I haven't done the math in my head, but around $100,000 will still be dipping into the general fund reserves based off of our projections for fiscal year 2021. But I would also say, keep in mind, I am working on finalizing our fiscal year 1920 as well. Any revenues we receive through August 31st, we could, from an accounting perspective, still count back to the prior year. So if we happen to have some revenues that came in higher than projected for 1920, those will also go back into the general fund reserve. And I will have an update for council at our next meeting for our August financial forecast report. So yes, this will offset some of the general fund deficit, and you'll have an update as to where that stands to through 6/30 and then through 8/31 at our next meeting.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
So echoing what Councilmember Watson said, that I feel that staff has done an exceptional job under these very difficult financial circumstances, and of course we all have to keep a very close eye on any changes and adjustments that we'll need to make. But I don't have any questions at this time.
Thank you.
So are there any comments from the public on this item?
I don't see any comments from the public on this item.
So B, other council and staff reports. Do we have any other reports from staff at this time?
I will just report, and unless the city attorney would like to, or city engineer, but the Curtis Avenue, the warrant for the abatement of Curtis Avenue, we did receive from the court today. I think I've been told that maybe it was, over a dozen or so emails and phone calls to try to make it happen through this COVID period in the courts. It's all very different, and I don't know if the city attorney wants to speak more. But we did receive the warrant, and work should start on the abatement tomorrow. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. If there are any questions, though, I'm happy to answer them.
All right. So next, Vice Mayor Patino.
Yeah, I just want to report that at HTA we're getting deeper and deeper into the discussion of how we're going to be zero emission on our fleets, our bus fleets, in the next few years or 10 years. It is complicated because really evaluating the battery electric buses versus the hydrogen electric is difficult. They're different animals. They both function, and we're going to keep working on it until we can figure out a way to start. The question that did arise was with this kind of regional approach to the buses, we need to actually have some input as far as AMRTS. And so, and I sit in a meeting today and I said, well, I don't know where we're going with AMRTS. I don't know what the plans are. And I think that it would be a good time for us to get a report on what the plans are for AMRTS going to zero emissions, and see if we can relate that to what's going on with the HTA, and so we could all be working together on it. So hopefully we can get some info on that. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Watson?
I don't have anything this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Pereira?
Yeah, the only thing I just want to note, I think we all saw the news today about our health officer, Dr. Frankovich, resigning from her position. I know we already sent a letter earlier this summer expressing our appreciation for her tremendous leadership as health officer. And I just wanted to just reiterate that appreciation. Not that she's watching this meeting, because she should hopefully be enjoying her whatever time off she has, she should be enjoying it. But I just wanted to just reiterate that appreciation for her and for public health for the work that they've been doing, because they've been working really hard.
Right, thank you. And I want to also wish her well and appreciate that tremendous stress. I mean, we've all been under it, but she's especially been under it and has handled it very well. And we expressed our appreciation. I just want to do that again for the outstanding job that she's done during this very difficult time. As far as meetings that HCOG, which I'm on the board of, the executive director, Marcel Clem, is retiring, so they will have to appoint a new executive director. So that's an important function. Also on the RCA board, that in San Diego, there's something called the PCIA, which is a charge that the utilities are allowed to assess for their stranded costs. And in San Diego, in the San Diego Gas and Electric territory, that company has tried to recover that very large accumulated amount, which would result in a very high spike in rates down there, and that could eventually potentially ripple through to the other utilities such as ours with RCA and the Community Choice Energy Program. So the CalCCA, which is the industry group that we're through RCA a member of, is actively involved in that and trying to lessen any impact from that charge. So next is dates of future meetings. We have another special meeting scheduled on the COVID health emergency declaration, scheduled for noon Wednesday, September 30th at noon via teleconference. And we are adjourned. And welcome back, Councilmember Pereira.